संस्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। Friends, it is always a privilege to be here in Pittsburgh among the devotees of Sri Ramakrishna, and I have come here so many times. I don't need to introduce myself, and it is really a privilege to be here. We are building up the center of Sri Ramakrishna in Germany for the last 14 years. So I know what a great task it is to build up centers in foreign countries, and how difficult it is actually. Many things one has to do oneself, and devotees have to contribute their time for the activities in the center, which is not that easily available in these foreign countries. So when I came to Germany, I had some idea about how the centers work in India and how the centers work in the foreign countries. I worked in a department at the headquarters which helped me to gather information about these centers. So when I came there, I had some clear idea what to do, because Germany is a place where you need to know the language, which is very conservative, not favorable for a monastic organization, because it is mostly a Protestant country. Many things were very challenging. But I found that we needed to experiment on things to establish a center. First thing is that we should know what is the need of the people there, and how can we accommodate those needs without compromising our monastic ideals. That is a very challenging thing. Second thing is that we should build up a core group of volunteers or devotees, friends, who would be German. We don't need to import Indians from India to support the effort. So we needed to build up a core group of Germans who would help us in these things. Third thing is that we should experiment on the location which should be the best place to have a permanent center of Sri Ramakrishna. We checked all these things, and now we have come up with this idea that already we have 3 places, 3 centers. It is not easy to manage the activities at different places. So we are amalgamating all these 3, and we'll be building up a new center in Berlin. We'll buy our own land, which will have the zoning to allow us do public activities. So now we are trying to acquire a plot of land in Berlin, and in 14 years, after 14 years of experimentation, we are very confident that we will be able to build up a permanent center, and we will be able to substantially contribute to the spiritual needs of that place. So we are very happy that we have really enough experiences on this. We did not just start for some kind of profit making within 2 years like that. So So that is the thing we have been doing. So I know how difficult it is to build up the centers, and the pioneers, what kind of patience and perseverance they need to have to build up a center. So I appreciate your efforts, and that is why I feel it is a privilege to be here, to see that you are all working towards achieving that type of a goal. Now, that is for the introduction. Now I will try to discuss this very important topic. This is a really, really important topic because of the present day situation throughout the world. We generally don't look into the details of why Sri Ramakrishna has to be the ideal, spiritual ideal for this present age. A few points I would like to discuss. Generally speaking, we have not given much thought on that. Why Sri Ramakrishna should be universally accepted, and why there is no other such ideal available for us. For us means for the humanity. So a few points I will try to discuss. The first thing is that the universal acceptance, this is a big thing. In many forums where people discuss interfaith ideas, in USA it is a big thing, interfaith movement. It is very famous also here, but not in Europe. But they do have an idea of a kind of understanding between different religious groups and faiths. But the problem is that it is really difficult to practice acceptance. In many of the international interfaith forums, we hear people discuss the idea of tolerance. I attended a meeting in London where they had a banner which writes universal tolerance. This is the word which Swamiji hated very much, Swami Vivekananda. Tolerance means that I tolerate you. What kind of attitude it is? I may not tolerate you, but somehow I tolerate you. So there is a very thin line of distinction between what tolerance is and what intolerance is. Line is very thin between tolerance and intolerance. So Swamiji hated that. But we think that this is a wonderful word to use, religious tolerance. Swamiji said we don't tolerate, but we accept. So I will come to that idea, but before that, let me give some examples from the life of Sri Ramakrishna, how she accepted people without distinction of anything, whether a person is differently affiliated to any kind of religion, or whether a person is Hindu, Muslim, Christian, whether a person is man or woman, white, black, Indian, foreigner, like that. There was no consideration. In the life of Sri Ramakrishna, we have seen that he did not want to learn arithmetic. As a child, see the contribution of such great personalities, that from the very beginning of their life you will see that those traits are manifesting in their life. So these are living examples. Sri Ramakrishna did not want to learn arithmetic. A very disappointing fact for the mathematicians. And he did not want to learn arithmetic for the simple fact that it teaches subtraction. He said, because it teaches subtraction, deduction. Whom to exclude? Exclusion. Whom to exclude? In the scheme of this whole world, if this whole world is created by God, then whom to exclude from this? God has created everyone. So that was the living example. He did not learn. And in his teachings also, we don't find anything which speaks of this exclusivity. If you are familiar with the spiritual history of the world and also the spiritual literature the world over of different religions, I believe we will not be able to find an example where a particular religious book or scripture does not have the ideas of exclusion. Just look at any book, read any book. First thing is that you are different, others are excluded. That universal aspect of accepting the whole humanity as one will be difficult to find in those books. But in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we will see that he has never used a word excluding anyone. Therefore in his life and teaching, we find that this idea of acceptance worked, practiced. You are familiar with his life. He practiced all kinds of sadhanas according to the different denominations of Hindu religion itself and also some other religions. And he tested all these things and said that all these paths lead us to the same goal, which is God. This is very much new. Even though we quote from the Vedas that this idea was there. Yes, this idea was there, but this was an idea. But in the life of Sri Ramakrishna, that has been practicalized, applied, and we find a person promoting that idea, we find a person practicing that idea. Therefore, it is of a very great importance for the spiritual history of mankind. This is one aspect which we should highlight. But let me also give an example about the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, that the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna contains all these universal ideas about the whole of humanity. The Gospel is a unique scripture. First thing, that it does not have any idea about exclusion. This speaks of all-inclusive idea in spiritual realm. Then the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna itself stands out as a very, very unique literature. Now let us look at the writer or chronicler of this Gospel, compiler, that is Master Mahasaya Mahendranath Gupta. We all know that being disgusted with life, one night he, along with his wife, left his home, went away. And he wanted to end his physical life, commit suicide. But then, as we know, destiny brought him to Sri Ramakrishna. You see, when he came to Sri Ramakrishna, Master Masa writes that during his childhood he did not have the habit of writing diaries. So, on one occasion he thought that he should start writing his daily accounts about his life. Why he thought that, he did not know. In later lives he used to say that it was because Sri Ramakrishna prepared himself that way. Then he started writing the diary 3 times a day, then twice a day, then once a day. Then he could remember the events of a whole week and would write the diary at the end of the week. That's how he practiced, to remember the events of a week, of 2 weeks, of 3 weeks, of a month, and would write correctly with the dates and everything. So when he came to Sri Ramakrishna, he was a practiced hand to take notes of his talks. In between what happened, Tarak, Shivananda, who became Shivananda later on, he, as young Tarak, he used to come to Sri Ramakrishna. He was very amazed to see that Sri Ramakrishna is speaking so wonderful ideas, but no one is recording. So he started scribbling down Sri Ramakrishna's words. And Sri Ramakrishna observed that. And Sri Ramakrishna, hey, what are you doing? He asked. Then Tarak said, I am writing down. Then he said, it is not meant for you. Stop it. He knew that someone will come who will note down. So Tarak got disgusted, became very sad, and then he tore off those pages from his notes and threw away those things into the Ganges. Now see, another thing. When Master Masa was writing, Sri Ramakrishna approved that because he did not object to that. Not only that, sometimes Sri Ramakrishna used to inquire. One day he asked Master Masa, hey, someone wants to come in. Okay. Let me just read out to me what you have written about our conversation the other day. Then Master Masa opened the diary and said, you said these things on that day. Sri Ramakrishna corrected and said, no, I did not say that I said this. These are my ideas. I said I heard these things from such and such person. Look at the intellectual honesty. He is referring to the source. So, in today's world, this intellectual property right has become a big thing, because so-called scholars are being found to have committed some kind of crime in this respect, some kind of mistakes. So plagiarism has become a big word in today's world. Sri Ramakrishna did not allow that. So he checked exactly that day's event. Tell me what you have written about that day. You said these things. He said, no, I did not say that. I said I heard these things from such and such person. This is the intellectual honesty. And then Master Masa used to write all those things in his books. And you see, once after reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda wrote that you are unique. And he mentioned that in the dialogues of Socrates. He said Socratic dialogues are Plato all over. But here you are completely hidden. The writer, Master Mas, he was a professor of logic. And he was competent to write the diaries. And Sri Ramakrishna checked that his ideas are not being adulterated. This is a great thing to do, because difficult to suppress one's own desire to just supply own ideas into such things. That happened in case of Socratic dialogues, the dialogues written by Plato about Socrates. So I was wondering why Swami Vivekananda said that. Much later, when I was in Chennai, I was editor of the Vedanta Keshari magazine. I read an article in the Memphis Journal of Philosophy, published by the University of Memphis. There was an article, research article on this particular subject. And the researcher, the author, has mentioned that much of the Socratic dialogues are supplied by Plato himself. They are Plato's ideas, not Socrates'. So you see, this is a literature which was recorded during the lifetime of Sri Ramakrishna. All other scriptures, you just look at them, even the modern scriptures, they were written much later, after the disappearance of this particular person. And here Sri Ramakrishna is correcting, and even Holy Mother also certified that these are all correct. So Master Masai did not supply his ideas. Not only that, Sri Ramakrishna checked this. The second meeting of Master Masai with Sri Ramakrishna is of tremendous importance. You will see that chapter, that particular chapter about the second meeting of Sri Ramakrishna is actually the gist of the whole gospel of Sri Ramakrishna and gist of the whole Vedas. Because Master Masai is asking some questions, you will see the practicality of those questions, and they are eternal questions in the spiritual field. But thing is that Sri Ramakrishna is testing Master Masai and correcting his ignorance about understanding spiritual matters. If you read that, you will be simply amazed that how Sri Ramakrishna was careful about all these things. Initially it may not appear to us that Sri Ramakrishna was very conscious about it. As if something is happening, he is asking. No, he is asking not without any reason. So he asked Master Masai, so do you believe in God with form or without form? Then Master Masai said, I believe in God without form.
Sri Ramakrishna said.
So he believed in God without form. Master Sri Ramakrishna said, okay, fine, that is good. But don't say that those who believe in God with form, they are wrong. That's what Master Masai wanted to say, and Sri Ramakrishna scolded him, saying that that is the one defect of you Calcutta people. Lecturing others how to do things without practicing by yourself. Like that. The thing is that he is correcting the ideas even. So Master Masai tried to argue this matter with Sri Ramakrishna. He said, how is it possible but that these two things should be true at the same time? God with form and God without form will be true at the same time. This is an age-old question which has been asked in the Vedas, also in the Upanishads. So in the commentary of the Isha Upanishad, that the idea that tad ye jati tannai jati, that Brahman moves, that Brahman does not move. Ye jati moves, na ye jati does not move. These are contradictory ideas. How are they true at the same time, valid at the same time? The Shankaracharya wonderfully writes the commentary That he says, Katham viruddham uchyate. How do you find there is a contradiction? Nirupadhi upadhi matvena upapatte. With an agent, with some attribute, when you look at the reality, that becomes a personal God with attribute. Without attribute, that is Brahman. With attribute, you call it God. Without attribute, you call it Brahman. So with attribute and without attribute, that word both are correct. So here also, Sri Ramakrishna says both are correct. Master Masa, he is, just see, he is a teacher of logic. Now he is putting forward his argument. He says, how can white milk would become red? Now see, when Sri Ramakrishna pointed out to the fallacy in that, even a professor of logic could learn from this. The simple fact, as Shankaracharya also discussed, that white milk became red. Became red. It is not by nature red. Became red. Therefore the red color has been added to this. And this red color is called agantuka dosaha. Superimposition. Upadhi added to white milk. That is why it became red. Therefore the same red white milk can become red milk if you add red color to this. This is simple logic. The professor of logic could not understand this. So I brought a cup of red milk. How do you get red milk? Because red powder has been added to that, that's all. How can white milk become red? Because you have added red color. That is upadhi. Shankaracharya said that Nirupadhi upadhi matvena upapatte. So Nirupadhi in the form of remaining without upadhi and with form, with upadhi. So these are ideas which creates dogmatism. What I believe to be logically alright, in spite of the fact that that is logically faulted, I stick to that. So Sri Ramakrishna wanted to tell Master Masa that you have to correct your understanding, because he is going to write the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the ideas of Sri Ramakrishna, so he may confuse all these things and he may misunderstand Sri Ramakrishna's ideas. I remember there was a sentence said by Holy Mother in Bengali. There is a book on Holy Mother, collection of reminiscences, Sri Mayar Padaprante, 3-volume books, compiled by Swami Purnatmananda. I wanted to translate that book into English and publish in Vedanta Keshe. I tried to find someone who would be competent to translate. There was one Malati Devi, who was the principal of the language school in Golpar, and she was a professor of English in maybe Jadavpur University. So she just retired from her work in Golpar, and someone informed me that Malati Devi can do this, could do this. So I approached her and she reluctantly agreed, but afterwards she said she was so much benefited. She did not know how to engage herself after her retirement. Then Holy Mother appeared in her life, and therefore she was so happy to remain engaged with Mother day and night, thinking on the words of Mother. So I saw that she was not able to translate one sentence from Bengali into English. A professor of English and a Bengali herself was afraid to translate one sentence. Holy Mother said, Baba amake deko. Now this is a sentence which does not fit to the stature of Holy Mother. Holy Mother would never say that. Baba amake deko. He would always say Thakur ke deko, Thakur ke deko. Always remember Sri Ramakrishna, call on Sri Ramakrishna. But here at one place he said, my son, call on me. So this could be a very simple translation, but she was afraid to translate it like that because it did not match with the personality or stature of Holy Mother. So she sent that sentence to me, asking me to translate. Whatever happens, merit or demerit, it would be mine. No, that was not the idea. But she was afraid to translate that. So how serious the things could be? Well, I translated it as, please remember me. But call on me will not be actually the right translation. Please remember me. Mother used to say like that, don't forget me. Baba amake bhule jeo na, like that. So therefore it is in consonance with Holy Mother's stature. So I translated that and said that back to her. So this should be the seriousness with which the compiler should act. That is why Sri Ramakrishna corrected his ideas, basic ideas, and that is the idea of acceptance, appreciation, acceptance, and that removes all sorts of dogmatism, fanaticism. Swamiji says dogmatism and its horrible descendant, fanaticism. Dogmatism actually breeds fanaticism. So he corrected the ideas of Master Masai so that there would be no trace of dogmatism and therefore fanaticism in his teachings. So with all these seriousness, Sri Ramakrishna's gospel has been created. That is why it is a unique scripture, and nowhere you will find a word which speaks of this exclusion. But you just read all other scriptures, I say all. Everywhere you will find these dogmatic ideas. Without interpretation they are really dangerously dogmatic. So this stands out to be the scripture for the whole of humanity, because it does not exclude anyone and it does not address the spiritual difficulties of Hindus only, or those who will follow Sri Ramakrishna. Swami Vivekananda has said, Sri Ramakrishna is an ideal. Whether people follow Sri Ramakrishna as a person or not, that does not matter, he says. But if someone follows Sri Ramakrishna's ideal, whoever he or she may be, that person will be benefited by that spiritual. That is what Swami Vivekananda has said. There is an incident in the life of Abhedanandaji. So one person, American lady perhaps, approached him and said, suppose tomorrow Sri Ramakrishna comes and asks you to marry, will you do that? Because he spoke about Sri Ramakrishna, spoke about his great devotion to Sri Ramakrishna and why he accepts Sri Ramakrishna as an ideal in that lecture. Therefore this lady had this pinching question, will you accept that? Sri Ramakrishna said, no, I will ask him to get out. Abhedanandaji told, I will ask him to get out. So why he is Sri Ramakrishna? No. First thing, Sri Ramakrishna will never say that. Now second thing is that I do not follow Sri Ramakrishna as a person. I follow him as an ideal. So there will be no compromise with that ideal. So that is how these ideas are free from this personality tax. Sri Ramakrishna's ideas are free from personality tax, universal. That is why it is acceptable by whole of humanity. So this is a great spiritual literature. Second thing is that the immense practicality it speaks of. Not only Sri Ramakrishna's gospel but Sri Ramakrishna's life itself stands out to be as a very practical example of spiritual life. Vedas have spoken so many ideas about realization. What is Brahman? What is this world? All these things are fine. But how to achieve those things? Who has shown that? Suppose a yoga teacher comes and says, this is what is called halasana, and he gives a big long lecture, theoretical lecture on what halasana is, what are the benefits of this. will you go second time to that yoga teacher? We will go to a yoga teacher who will himself or herself perform what Halasana is and show it in front of us so that we believe that it is true. We believe that it is doable. Otherwise we will, okay, these are ideas, they go miles overhead. So therefore, in the life of Sri Ramakrishna we see that religion has been made applied science, practical. He himself practiced, he himself demonstrated how to pray to God. He fell down on the ground, said, look, how to pray to God? It is like this. He fell down on the ground, rubbed his face against the floor, and it started bleeding. He started crying, throwing his hands and legs, everything. So this way one has to pray. He demonstrated how to do sadhana. And he showed that with the help of this frail body one can also realize God. With all defects in our body and all difficulties around, still we can practice these sadhanas. This way we get great hope that spiritual life is to be practiced, can be practiced. In the life of Sri Ramakrishna, we are very, very fortunate that his disciples did not compromise the truth. Saradanandaji has written the life of Sri Ramakrishna. There at one place he mentions that Sri Ramakrishna says, when I was meditating, I saw that my mind has gone to Rasik's house. What a great news for all of us. That when we start meditating, our mind goes to Costco and all over all the supermarkets and all the places. So we say when Sri Ramakrishna said that when he was meditating, his mind went to Rasik's house, then it is a great approval of our facts about our meditation. Our mind can go to Costco, there is no problem. No, there is problem. There is problem because Sri Ramakrishna was the savior. His mind went to Rasik's house to save him, to save Rasik. When our mind goes to supermarket, to save whom? To save whom? We cannot just say that they are all to be emulated that way. So, but the fact is that, one great fact is that it is possible. When one is meditating, it is possible that the mind will move about everywhere. Last year when I was speaking in Dallas, someone asked questions about meditation and I said, all the steps of meditations, they are all mechanical steps. Mechanical steps, anyone can do. You have to sit cross-legged. There is nothing mystical about it to sit cross-legged. As if you are floating in sky and your legs are folding in mystical forms, etc. This is not like that. As ordinary human beings, we sit, we fold our legs, etc. These are all mechanical facts about meditation. So after this lecture, one American young man, he came to me and said, you saved me from so much trouble. Why? Always I thought that everything is so mystical and I don't experience any mystical thing in my meditation. So all the steps seem to me very, very weird. But now everything makes sense. That you said that these steps are all mechanical. I said, but next sentence I said, the result is mystical. That is also true. You keep it in mind that is the promised result. When you practice it mechanically, you get promised result which is mystical. So this is how one has to look at spiritual life. It is not something out of this world. It is very much down to earth. And spiritual truths are only truths which are applied truths. All other truths are theoretical because they go on changing. The other day I was reading a book, The Order of Time. There the quantum physicist, he has written that time has no definition actually. He says it is an illusion. As Vedanta says, it is an illusion because time has got different values at different places. People on the hills, they age quickly, and people on the plains, they age slowly. So and also it is a mental construct, the time. Two people who will be marrying on 30th July, 1 month later on 30th July, will see that the time is not going. 30th July is not coming, it is taking long time to get married. And a person who will be hanged on 30th July after 1 month sees it is every day it is sunset, sunset, sunset. Time flies for that person. But time has nothing to do with all these things. It is just a mental construct. He says, and many other facts about time, he says, it is just an illusion. So, what we see in the life of Sri Ramakrishna, that he said that it is very practical. We don't get this record in the lives of any other incarnation or prophet or son of God. We don't get that. I read one article by S.S. Raghavachar in India. In those days, he wrote a wonderful article about this. Why is it that we don't get a detailed record of the spiritual practices of these great personages like Rama, Krishna, and also Jesus, Muhammad, etc. Then he said, here Sri Ramakrishna is responsible for this great event. Sri Ramakrishna himself narrated things like this. My mind has gone to Rasik's house, etc. He disclosed all these facts. He said what happened when you were practicing all these things. Therefore, and also the devotees of Sri Ramakrishna, they recorded this fact. They did not think that if we talk about the spiritual practices of Sri Ramakrishna, then Sri Ramakrishna will not be declared as God. He is just an ordinary spiritual sadhaka practitioner. So therefore, that was the problem with the devotees of these people. They thought if we write down details of sadhana of these people, then they won't be God. God does not need to do sadhana. God is God. God won't do anything. Whereas Sri Krishna says, see the fact, Sri Krishna says, Nahi kas Name parthasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam vartayeva chakarmani. The great truth about these spiritual personages. He says, I do not have any duty to be performed in these three words, Swargamakta Patala. No duty I need to perform because nanavaptam avaptavyam. I have nothing to attain or to get, nothing to lose. Everything is mine. So what am I going to lose or what am I going to get? But still he said, the fact is that vartayeva chakarmani, still I am constantly engaged in incessant activities, he says. So then if Sri Krishna is engaged in incessant activities, then he is not God. He said, no, the fact is that I don't need to do, but I do these. Then why he says that? The next verse says, Yadi jahang navarteyam jatu karmanya tandrita mama vartmanu vartante manusya parthasana. If I do not perform these works myself, then people will follow my example of inaction. Then what he says? People will follow me as an ideal and follow me as an ideal of inaction, laziness, doing nothing. So he says that then what will happen? I will be the cause of the destruction of my own creation. Cause of destruction of my own creation. That is why Holy Mother has said, I have done enough to set an example of an ideal. She is saying, Adarsher bada korechi. I have done enough to set an example as an ideal. I have done enough. Though, as Sri Krishna said, I don't need to do anything. This is the immense practicality we come across in the life and teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. This is one fact which is not available in any other tradition or literature. In any other literature. And so Raghavacharya says, it happened because of the ignorance of the devotees. They thought if we write down the details of the spiritual practices of our prophet or son of God or God, incarnation of God, then people will not, it will be difficult to promote him or her as an incarnation or as God himself. That was the ignorance. Therefore we did not get enough hope in them that it is possible. So we followed them theoretically. We have to go to temple, go. Because it is good to go to temple, it will do good to us. But we don't do this. That is the thing. God can give everything, but I have to enjoy that. God can bring food, but I have to eat it. That is the thing. I have to do. That idea has been very much stressed in the life of Sri Ramakrishna. That is unique in the spiritual literature of the world, spiritual history of the world. Then another thing is that Sri Ramakrishna clarified the idea of renunciation in practice. Again it is in practice. There is a very misconception about renunciation. If you say renunciation, in Germany people are so much afraid because Catholicism is not very much appreciated in Germany. Renunciation. So they are afraid to renounce. And as the word discrimination. In India we can use this, but here in the West it is a very bad word. So we have to find out what is this. This Tyagananda said it is discernment. And in German I have found Unterscheidung, differentiation. Differentiating between what is good, bad, what is permanent, impermanent, like that. What is preferable, what is pleasurable. This kind of differentiation. Actually Sri Ramakrishna has said Tyaga means Vishaya Virag, Ishwara Anurag. We have to have two things together. Dispassion towards these worldly enjoyments and passion for God. That is the meaning Sri Ramakrishna explained. It is not that we are going to lose it. There is a nice observation by Amartya Sen, that famous economist, in his book The Argumentative Indian. He quotes from the Yajnavalkya Maitreyi Samvada of this Vedaranyaka Upanishad, and he says that Maitreyi's worries had some worldly connotations. As Indian commentators, he writes like that, as Indian commentators have explained ages together. But it had also a spiritual connotation. And he said, if we want to live happily and live longer, and it is not by enjoying the material things in the world, but thinking about what happens after death. To be engaged in that also. So Maitreyi spoke about that. So Maitreyi was very much concerned about what will happen to her. So if you remember that incident, that when Yajnavalkya came and proposed to two of his wives that he was planning to take up sannyasa, and therefore he wanted to get rid of his properties. He wanted to divide the properties between two of his wives. Then Maitreyi should be happy that she will get half of the properties. But Maitreyi asked, why are you giving up these things? That is the question Maitreyi asked. Material things we will get, okay, but why are you giving them up? And what for are you going? And then she tried to equate and she asked, are you going for spiritual liberation, for realizing Brahman? Will not these properties bring that realization? Then Yajnavalkya said, no, that is not possible. Then Maitreyi asked, then you consider these things as trash. And you want to divide that trash between us. And you say that you love us. So then Maitreyi says, give us the share of that for which you are going. So that is the connotation of this renunciation. Give us something better than what it is, what is trash. Something better. And you are going for that. So give us a share of that. That is what is called renunciation, discernment, or Unterscheidung means differentiating between what is good and what is bad. So Holy Mother said that Sri Ramakrishna had the splendor of renunciation. So Holy Mother also said that people say that Sri Ramakrishna came here to preach the ideal of Jato Mat Tato Path. As many paths, so many faiths, so many paths. But according to me, she said, it is renunciation what was the glory of Sri Ramakrishna. Renunciation. That is the splendor of Sri Ramakrishna. That is why Swami Vivekananda says that Sri Ramakrishna has no peer. No peer, no comparison. You will not find another person who can be compared with Sri Ramakrishna. Incomparable in the spiritual history of the world. And then fourth thing, that his teachings, if you read the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, it is meant for all types of practitioners. Dualists, non-dualists, and atheists also. The word atheist means the person who does not believe in a personal God. That is what non-dual Vedanta speaks of. Non-dual Vedanta does not want us to believe in a personal God. Swami Vivekananda has said he is an atheist who does not believe in himself. Who does not believe in himself. So therefore, it is meant for the atheists also. Sri Ramakrishna's gospel, if you read, he is addressing the problem of all, because it is his creation, it is God's creation. Everyone belongs to him. Therefore, he has to teach everyone. So messages are meant for everyone, and it is combined in one book because it is free from all dogmatism. That is what Swami Vivekananda has very nicely narrated, that we are a non-sectarian sect. We are a sect which preaches and practices non-sectarianism. We are a group which preaches non-groupism. It is a kind of idea. So, in that book, because so many different teachings are included, that book has become universal. Because it has a universal scope and it is meant for the whole of humanity. That is why it is called spiritual humanism. It does not differentiate people on the basis of material things. Like once they were talking about this caste differentiation in India. I said, you too have all caste differentiation. And very dangerously in India I heard for the first time this, what is that, one European company runs these flights there. So what are those companies in India? One is Air India, another is what?
Indian Airlines?
No, Indian Airlines no more there.
Spirit.
No, another one. Jet Airways. Jet Airways were announcing business class, first class passenger will deplane first, and afterwards the masses, lower caste people will come. Those who spend their own money to buy the tickets, they are lower class. Who spend their government money to buy the tickets, they are higher class. They have privileges. Privileges, first class, second class, economic class. What are these? Are these not differentiations? Are these not creating caste a different type? So, just everywhere the same. They just give a different name. Give a very wonderful name. Call it by a wonderful name. You cannot call coolie, but say passenger's assistants. A wonderful name, but these people do the same job. So this is how we cheat ourselves. So here in the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, because all teachings are given a place in the same book, therefore they have lost their dogmatic flavor. I am there, you are also there. So I cannot claim to be special. This is one great thing you will see in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. It is non-sectarian and non-dogmatic. So it is universal. It preaches universal humanism. And fifth is, which is very special, and the first time in the history of the world it has happened, that Atmana Mokshartham Jagadhitaya Cha. Our spiritual life is not devoid of its worldly implications. Our spiritual life is not devoid of its worldly implications. That is why it is practical. That is why it is called applied spirituality. So, Atmana Mokshartham, spiritual life is for the liberation of one's own self, and at the same time for the benefit of this world. These two ideals have never been combined. In the Christianity also these ideals are there, but they are separate. We are spiritual people, we do good to you, showing compassion unto you. Sri Ramakrishna says that it is not compassion, it is service. Because by doing this you gain spiritually. Not that you show some compassion. Nor it is not charity, it is a kind of sadhana, spiritual practice. This is a new contribution by Sri Ramakrishna. That incident has that deep influence and significance. Sri Ramakrishna heard that Vaishnavas say, Name ruchi jive daya Vaishnava seva. So Name ruchi, one should have a taste for taking the name of God. That is a very difficult thing. We sit and do japa, but mind travels around because there is no ruchi, there is no taste for the name. So Yatishwarananda ji used to say, find out a relation between yourself and God. Then only you will have the taste of the name. You just look at this world, in the worldly things, when we love each other, suppose, then I would like to hear your name. I would like to think of you with that name. So that is how we make a relation between yourself and God. And then we will see that we have taste for the name of God. And then next one was Jive Daya. So compassion to all created beings. Jive Daya, all created beings. And the third thing was the bone of contention, that Vaishnava Sevan. Vaishnavas, the devotees of God, they are different. Different in the creation of God. Devotees of God are different. So much partiality, you see. If you take my name, I am your devotee. I will come to you. God is also partial that way.
Yeah.
Not, he is not favorable to others. Because you are not calling me, why should I say that you are my children? So, Jivedaya, Jiva, created beings. But Vaishnava Seva, serve the devotees of God. That hits Sri Ramakrishna like anything. Serve means Jivedaya, who are you to show compassion to God? This Jiva, created beings. This is the creation of God, and if He wants, He will show compassion. Who are you to show compassion? You are also created. And why do you differentiate between the creation? That Vaishnavas are special, first-class passengers. What is this? So Vaishnava Seva, that Seva will bring here, Jiva Seva, and then remove that third sentence. That was the implication there. So he said that service to God is service to humanity is service to God. That is spiritual humanism. Spirituality addresses humanity as divine. And that is why there is spiritual humanism. And there is no differentiation between who is a devotee, who is not. Sri Krishna says, Chaturvidha bhajante maam jana sukritino Arjuna. He says, 4 types of people come to me. They are sukrita, and they are of great merit. Why? Who are they? Arto, Jignasur, Artharthi, Jnani cha Bharatarsava. Arto, those who want something, to get rid of something. Okay, I am suffering from this problem of this court case. Please help me to get out of it. Praying to God. I am suffering from fever. Please help me to get out of fever. For everything you have to just get rid of something, we are praying to God. And if that is gone, then we forget about God. We forget you. But just do this. And then Artharthi, to get something, to get rid of something here and to get something. Artharthi. So I want something, please see that I get a lottery. Please see that there is a wonderful poem that says, I don't know how many times you saved me by not fulfilling my wishes, by not answering my prayers. I don't know how many times you saved me by not fulfilling my wishes, by not answering my prayers. This is a big truth in spiritual life. If God had answered maybe of our prayers, we would have gone mad, just gone mad. So, Artharthi, we want something from God. You give me that. And when you have given this, then I forget you. So the thing is that God becomes a bellboy. I press the bell, he comes and stands. What can I do for you? Then I said, okay, take away my fever. Then he takes away my fever, goes away. And again I press the bell, I bring $200, then he brings $200. Then he goes away, I don't bother. He becomes a bellboy. Now see the greatness of God. That is why he is God. He says, they too are my devotees. Chaturvidha bhajante maam jana sukritino Arjuna. Sukritina, they are persons of merit, good merits. Arto Jignasur Artharthi Jnani cha Bharatarsava. Jignasu will think of God, of Jnani also, but these people are also my devotees, because they are not going to Bill Gates, they are coming to me. That is why they are my devotees. So he does not make any differentiation between Jivas and the Vaishnavas, those who are followers of Vishnu or the devotees of God. So Seva, that service, actually speaking, that is very selfish, to think of one's own liberation. Swami Vivekananda has stressed this idea very much. We live in society, we are benefited by society, and then we don't contribute to the good of the society. That is very selfish. So one has to see the practicality of spiritual life, not impracticality. Practicality of spirituality, the idea of individuality. I attended a seminar in what is that? Auckland, in New Zealand. In the university, they organized a seminar, the role of women in modern society. And a monk has to speak on that. There were other speakers. And monk is in the best position. The role of women in modern society. Now, and there were many feminists you could see on the first row. There are so many people, all feminists, they were sitting there. So now if a monk opens the mouth and speaks something, they are always looking at this. Because according to Protestant religion, a monk is a woman hater.
Is it?
Woman hater.
Oh.
So they look at a monk from that standpoint. So these are all very peculiar things in this world one has to face. So I thought, what shall I say actually? So then I just inquired about what the topic was. The role of women in modern society. First thing, what is modern society? Modern society means society of modern people who believe in modern ideas. But how long are we modern? How much portion of our daily life is modern? Most of the time we behave like even earlier than primitive human beings. Most of the time in our day-to-day life, you will see we react to our basic instincts like anger, delusion, greed. These are even primitive, more than primitive human beings. Earlier than primitive human beings, these things came into us. So we behave that way. How have we become modern? Modern greed, modern anger, modern jealousy. Is it something like that we possess modern jealousy? Modern anger. Rather, primitive jealousy used to be much better than modern jealousy. So, how did we become modern? How do you differentiate a modern society from a traditional society? They do differentiate because it is not traditional society. Then what way is it modern? Modern means a renewed version, an improved version? No. Degenerated version may be the right word. So therefore, the first thing I asked, I don't know how to differentiate between modern and traditional society. I don't find that it's something that has many ingredients which we should feel boast of. There is nothing as such. The second thing I said that I can't speak on this subject because first thing is that I don't know what is the role of men in modern society. So how to define what is the role of women in modern society? That is the mistake the earlier feminism did. That is why the second wave of second generation of feminism is correcting those mistakes. That we did not take into consideration the other part of that logic. The other part. So what is the role of men in the modern society and what is the role of women in the modern society? We can then consider this. But only women. That is too much of this one, differentiation. That is one thing. And then I asked this question because they were all scholars there, done PhD on the sociology and other things. I said, can you just tell me what is the basic unit of a society? Is it a family or an individual? If it is an individual, you can just define that individual. A man, a woman, define this like that. And if the basic unit of the society is a family, that one has to say, then you have to define both together, not exclusively. And that was very much appreciated by the dean who was the moderator. And he said, this we have to think on. Because which is the basic unit of society. So it is like that. So, what I was saying that we were too far from this discussion, that the teachings are so many together that this becomes universal in this book, in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And that is why it speaks of universal humanism. And then the last point which we were discussing, that we have to take into consideration the existence of material world and discuss spiritual life together with this, not devoid of the implications of this. There is a saying in the scriptures that asatye vartmani sthitva tata satyam samiyate. If we want to realize satyam, truth, we have to place ourselves in untruth. Living in this material world, we have to search for the truth which is not material. That is what Holy Mother and Sri Ramakrishna, both of them have said, that it is not bad to be in the world, but it is bad to be of the world. It is not bad to be in the world, but it is bad to be of the world. So we can live in this world because there is no other place to live. And remaining in this world, being anchored, having our feet very much on the ground, we can start practicing spirituality which will give us a transcendental experience. Transcendental means which transcends the scope of this material world. So therefore the realization will be mystical, means transcendental. But all the practices should be grounded on this earth, on this world, on this material world. Therefore, should we not do something for this material world? In one of his talks given to the Sadhu Samaj in Uttarakhand in Haridwar, the late 10th president of Ramakrishna Order, Swami Vireshwaranandji, said, I am not here, this is his quotation from his talks, I am not here to sermonize before the honored sadhus here. But I want to tell that one has to do this social service, because for the benefit of the monastic organizations we should do that, because we are products of this society. And if the society is diseased, you do not get monks which are free from diseases. So that disease will be carried into the monastic fold. So if we serve the society and try to remove that disease, then we will get good monks. Then our monastic organization also will be able to retain its glories, etc., purity. Therefore, it is incumbent on us that we serve the society, and it is for our own benefit. There is a selfish tinge in that. For our own benefit we have to serve the society. This is a very, very great truth. Very great truth, because practicing ideal is necessary, and then they will have the right to dictate terms, to guide. Otherwise not. Swamiji says the person who is sitting in the Himalayan caves and meditating, don't think that that person has become free from all these vices. Put those people in the society and just see what happens. Put to the severe test, they will fail, because they have not done this. In Germany they say Ausbildung. Practical training is not there. Practical training means how to react with this world, that is not there. They have not learned from these practical reactions, and they have not learned how to stop those reactions. These are all practical things. So therefore the whole story of Sri Ramakrishna, if you set that against the perspective of the spiritual humanity, we will see that Sri Ramakrishna stands out as the unique and only example. Unique means only example to be followed by the humanity. That is why we call it spiritual humanism. Sri Ramakrishna's universal ideas are nothing but universal spiritual humanism. So, thank you very much. If you have any questions, it's okay.
When I start japa, my mind will go here and there. My question is, how to control my mind?
This you have been taught, because you say that you are doing japa, that is the only way. Shri Krishna says, Abhyasena. So, Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam, Yoga Sutra says, and repetition, that is the idea of modern habit forming. If you want to form a habit, get rid of another habit, then we have to repeat the same thing. Then that makes a habit. And then we get rid of another habit, contrary habits. So this is the only way. So by doing japa.
Okay.
By doing japa.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Kunalda, any difficult question?
Any what question, Maharaj?
Difficult question.
Maharaj, any suggestions to check the growth of fundamentalism throughout the world? And that is that no religion is exception to that right now. What can we do to...
You see, that is can't give a suggestion like that, but thing is that no religion is exception to that, that is also to be checked. But thing is that sometimes, as I said, sometimes really, you see, Sri Krishna himself says that I am the person, original teacher, who taught this yoga to humanity. He says that Saivayam Maya Prokta. So that yoga has been told by me in the beginning of this creation. So he said, I am that original teacher who has come now to teach the same yoga to people. Why? He says that this yoga was taught, but sa kalene mahata yogo nasta parantapa. Due to long passage of time, dilution happened. And therefore this yoga has lost its vigor. So I have come to rejuvenate that one. But the same yoga I will be teaching. This is a historical fact of aberration. It's some kind of these failures happen in all spheres of, in political sphere, in every sphere. This dilution happens, aberration happens. And Shankaracharya commented on that, and wonderfully he says, why did it happen? He says, because these yoga principles have been preached by people who had goals other than spiritual ones. Who had goals other than spiritual ones. So spiritual leaders preaching, practicing different things that I am not going into, but preaching, propagating spiritual ideals. But by themselves they have political ideals, economic ideals, but not spiritual ideals. Who have goals, spiritual goals are not there. Who had goals other than spiritual ones. Shankaracharya writes that. So in most of the cases throughout the world you will see people who are the protectors of that particular faith or representatives of that particular faith, they have goals other than spiritual ones. That is where dilution happens. And that is why people come to suffer. And that is why God has to come again, the original teacher has to come again to do that. But thank God, Vedanta or Hinduism as such has a philosophy which includes everything. At least that is there. So we can go back to that, refer to that and draw inspiration from this. In no other literature, scripture, you will get that universal philosophy which accepts all humanity. But Vedanta has that authoritative book at least. Suppose I say that in practice we have problem. That is the same everywhere. That is how we say that fundamentalism is happening everywhere. But fundamentalism has happened not today. It has started long before and practiced by those who are propagating now against fundamentalism. So, but because they do not have any authoritative scriptural directive which says that fundamentalism is bad, that you are not the only chosen people because you don't have the whole truth. These are all things which are of very practical value. So at least Hinduism or Vedanta as such has a philosophy which tells that fundamentalism is wrong. That is our hope. Otherwise I cannot just suggest anything as such. But this is the problem.
Thank you.
I have a question. I just want to know, when you were telling us the story, that when he was going to divide between his two wives, all the materialistic comforts, and the wise woman said, that tell me, that give me the good part, the renunciation part, teach me also. So what did he teach? Because I've not read the book or something.
No, you read that book, that is the Vedantic.
Can you tell me in short, what did he actually teach them? That how to, with living in the materialistic world, because she taught him that, that that you can get the same thing, by living in the materialistic world.
Yeah.
So,
that in one word, Vedanta says that each soul is potentially divine. Each soul is potentially divine. So practice that divinity. So this is the ideal preached by Gita also, that when suppose we face a problem, that is very practical, Gita speaks of that. Suppose we face a problem, how to address that problem? So first thing Gita says, you just think, who is facing the problem? So suppose a dog comes and bites me. So the Newtonian law, third law says that for each action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So equal and opposite reaction is that I will also bend down and bite the dog in return.
No.
So we can't do that. Why? Because I know that I cannot bend down that much. I am not a dog. That is the differentiation. So Vedanta says, who is facing the problem? So nepotism, favoritism, all these things will not come. When I know that I am not petty human being, I am divine. Can I do this? Then I can't do this. Can I do this? So this says each soul is potentially divine. If we know our value, then it saves us from many problems and it helps us to solve many challenges. Many challenges. It is very practical. We look for a quick bucks, means for immediate result. But if we think of this, then we will see that if we are not after immediate results, but the long-term result will be much more beneficial than immediate result. One has to practice some forbearance, patience. Then you will see that it will bear better fruit afterwards. So this is how he taught that. He not only taught the whole Vedantic literature is full of that teaching, but we have to practice that who we are. That is why they say Homo sapiens means wise people. Why did we become Homo sapiens? Now, from the day we asked a question about ourselves, who we are, from that day we are called Homo sapiens. Do we really ask that question? If we don't ask, then we go one step behind the evolution theory. So these are all things to be understood and
Maharaj,
practice.
is there any German word for Vedanta?
No, Vedanta is Vedanta.
Or it's still called Vedanta?
Vedanta, yes. And in Holland it is called Vedanta. They say Vivekananda.
There's no V there.
V is Fao. But in Germany they try to keep the foreign words like that. So Vedanta.
So have they started believing in renunciation? The Germans?
Actually we don't believe in renunciation, but we practice renunciation.
Practice.
We don't need to believe. If you go to the store, you choose between two things. That is called renunciation. Okay, this is maybe good but more valuable, so I won't take it. I will take of less value. In Germany there is a product called Ya, J-A, Ya. So Ya means it is not a company name, but something you say yes, I buy it. So it is Ya, and it's cheapest, and perhaps sometimes it is the worst type of thing. But some people will have that satisfaction to buy this because it is cheaper. So, but it is not having the nutritional value. So we do choose. We practice that renunciation, separation. We practice every day, in every day. But as soon as we say renunciation, we are afraid. Maybe we have to leave everything behind. The BMW car will be lying there, and who will own that? That's the big question. No, it is not that. You have your BMW car. There's no problem with that. So this is attitudinal change. Change in our attitudes.
Like they said, you can enjoy all the material comforts and things that are there in this world,
Yeah.
but not be attached to them.
Yeah, then actually when you are not attached to things, then your definition of enjoyment will change. Change for a better purpose and better connotation. And you will enjoy it much more than what we really.
So our only attachment has to be to God, about God.
Yeah. If we practice that attachment, then detachment comes automatically.
Right.
If we give value to the permanent things, then impermanent things will have less and less value. Actually speaking, the big problem, we have never tried to taste higher kind of enjoyment. Higher kind of enjoyment. You see, there are so many incidents. How they enjoy, even teasing each other. There was on Sarat Chandra Pandit and Sarat Chandra Chattopadhyay. Sarat Chandra Pandit was called Dada Thakur. He became famous very much in Bengal. And Sarat Chandra Chattopadhyay, is a great novelist of Bengal. But they were very good friends, and both of them used to be known for their literary capacity, ability. Sarat Chandra Pandit, Dada Thakur, he used to run a magazine called Vidushak. Vidushak means who finds fault with everyone. So that is not a very good word actually. Vidushak means this fellow always finds faults with others. And so Sarat Chandra Chattopadhyay, he came early for a conference or get together. Then Sarat Chandra Pandit, Dada Thakur, he came a bit later. So when he entered, Sarat Chandra Pandit entered, then Chattopadhyay made some fun with him. Said, "Oh, okay, please come Vidushak, please come," because he was running the Vidushak magazine. Then immediately he replied, "Yes, I have come to see Charitrahin Sarat Chandra." Characterless, because he wrote a book, Charitrahin. So you see, so they teased each other, but what kind of, we still remember it and feel so happy about it. So that is a different kind of enjoyment.
Right.
We have never experienced that, tried to experience that. Then we will see that these things are of no value actually. And actually the grosser the enjoyment, the what is that? More damaging will it be. The grosser the enjoyment, more damaging will it be. That's what we have seen. Using our physical body for enjoyment actually creates a lot of troubles. But using our mind for enjoyment, you will see, makes us better human beings. Alina, do you have any question? No? Why not? You have to answer this question.
Answer the question, why doesn't she have a question?
Yes.
Oh.
This is the most difficult question to answer, but she can answer. Can you answer this?
Because I understand.
Thank you very much. Nobody said that.
What did you say?
Because I understand.
Only she understood, but others did not understand. I believe they too understood, but they did not say that.
Yeah, she
Thank you very much, because you say appreciate. Someone came and said, "You recommended to listen to the lecture of Swami Vivekananda," and I went there. What kind of genius he is? Why? He is not very special. Why? Because I understood everything whatever he said. There is a joke in Bengali that if you attend a lecture and don't understand much of it, then you will think that the speaker is a genius.
That's probably true of other languages too, believe me.
Yeah.
This is everywhere.
In Germany there is a saying, if you can make a thing complicated, why do you make it simple? Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.